Hi guys, today I'm going to show you how to craft a weapon for the Akane miner, Mind Over Matter miner. And if you don't have enough currency to do this really expensive craft, you can always use some budget options. I put a link here for weapons with some flat to spells, crit sense to spells, multi and mana. These are pretty solid to start with, and they're really cheap as well. There's a lot of them. And you can tweak the search if you want to make it better. But yeah, this is what you will end up with if you follow this crafting process. I put different variations. I recommend using a Sambar Scepter as a base, even though you can also use a dagger or a wand probably. I recommend the Sambar Scepter because it's the best implicit penetration for most builds, and it's really hard to hit the +1 to all spell skill gems on a dagger for some reason. Even if it's a rune dagger, it's still really hard. And yeah, so the recommended base is going to be Sambar Scepter, but you can use other bases as well if you really want. And the item level for this, I recommend is level 81. If you don't care about having tier 1 mana, you can always craft on a level 76 base. It's going to be slightly cheaper, but I recommend 81. So you want to start with a level 81 Sambar Scepter, and you want to start by doing Corroded Metallic Shattering on a 3-socket Resonator or Etheric Corroded Metallic Shattering, and you're gonna keep going until you hit +1 to all spell skill gems with random mods. Once you have this base, you want to start getting either 3 prefixes or 5 affixes, and you want to do Fracture 3 or Fracture 5 with the Harvest. And you can use, you can craft an aspect if you're missing some affixes, or you can suffix to prefix if you're missing some prefixes. This is really easy step. Once you fracture your weapon, you want to start to just spam Lucent Fossils. And if you don't fracture +1, you have to restart and start over and make another base. If you, for example, fractured spell damage here or physical damage, there will be a brick and you have to fracture again. This takes 3 tries on average, and if you're doing fracture 5, it takes 5 tries on average. So depending on the market price, it might be better to do fracture 3 or fracture 5. Once you have your +1 fractured, you're gonna have to Lucent Fossil spam until you hit T1 or T2 mana. I recommend T1, but if it's too rare, T2 is fine. It shouldn't take too many fossils. This step shouldn't be that expensive. If you have another prefix with this, like for example here, you can always prefix to suffix to have a 50% chance of removing this prefix. And if you remove the mana, you go back to Lucent Fossil spamming. You also want to fill up the suffixes, so if you have a suffix open, you can always craft Aspect of the Avian, or if you really have like a lot of suffixes open, you can craft a prefix and reroll keep prefixes until you have 2 suffixes, and then you craft Avian last. Or you could also craft a prefix and slam to fill it up. But yeah, make sure you have 1 prefix open and 3 suffixes full. So at this point, we want to unveil a prefix. There is a lot of good mods that you can hit. Spell damage with mana regen, spell damage with chaos damage, non-chaos as extra, sorry. There is chaos damage if you're using some weird chaos damage skill. You could also, like if you're using Frostbolt or something, you could also go for cold damage. If you're using Fireball or Blazing Salvo, you can go for fire damage. And if you're going for Ball Lightning or Arc or any lightning skill, you can use lightning damage. These say that they have 11% chance of rolling, but I think it's bugged because these mods are like weighted wrong. This mod, for example, has 10,000 for some reason, and it's like it's skewing the result of the other build mods. So these are more common than what it says. I tried on Craft of Exile and they're pretty common. I also crafted with something similar and I saw this mod pretty often. So it's not too hard to hit a good prefix, but in case you don't hit a good prefix, you always have a 50% chance of removing either the good mod or the bad mod. If you remove the good mod, you're gonna have to start over from Lucent Fossil spamming. If you remove the bad mod that you just unveiled, you can unveil again. How you do this is you annul once, so that you have 5 affixes on the item. If you remove a prefix, you're done. If you remove a suffix, you do a prefix to suffix, and it's a 50-50. And you can keep doing this over and over until you hit spell damage or whatever you want on the third prefix. And this should finish your prefixes. Like up to this point is not that expensive. The most expensive part is the fracture. Rolling the mana with fossils is not too hard. And you only have to unveil one mod. If you fail, you can just re-roll the mana again and try again. It's not too hard to hit this. Now you want to start by, for your suffixes, you want one suffix open. And how you do this is that you re-roll keep prefix, so that your prefixes are protected, and you re-roll the suffixes. You want to do this because you want one suffix open, so that you can, prefix cannot be changed. And after you craft prefix cannot be changed, you can either use a veiled chaos orb. This forces a veiled suffix on the item. Or you can also reroll crit. Every time you do this step, it costs 2 exalts, but you can keep doing this step over and over until you hit the perfect suffix that you want. So for example, here I showed you some good suffixes you can choose from unveiling. You can go for double damage while focused, crit multi when a unique enemy is nearby, or trigger. Trigger is probably the best one for this build. You want probably one trigger and one without trigger on your weapons. And instead, if you go for crit sense, reroll crit, you want to keep going until you hit a really high tier of crit to spells or crit multi. Once you have your first suffix, what you can do is cannot roll attack mods, and you can augment crit. What this does, it will always block crit sense to attacks. So for example, if you have crit sense to spells, you augment crit, you will always hit crit multi. And if you have crit multi, you will always hit crit sense to spells. So the tier is going to be random, but at least you're going to get a tier of crit, right? And if you have a bad mod as a second suffix with the first suffix that you want to keep, what you can do is you craft can roll attack mods. And if you do non-crit to crit, as long as all of your prefixes are full and all of your suffixes are full, and you have can roll attack mods, if you do this, you have a 75% chance of hitting crit sense to spells or crit multi, and a 25% chance to hit crit sense to attacks. So this is like a 75% chance of giving you a good mod, pretty much. Depending on the market price, this might be worth or not. But yeah, the safest route is augment crit. If you instead unveil the once you slam the second suffix, you can always craft the third one, and this is pretty much a finished scepter. Really three really good prefixes, 2 good suffixes, and the third mod is crafted. This is like one version of the scepter. You probably want one of these and one of these with the trigger. But yeah, the second option, if you unveil a suffix instead of going for crit, you unveil trigger like we showed before, or double damage or whatever you want. And then you can, as we showed here, you craft can roll attack mods, and then you augment crit for either crit multi or crit sense. You're stuck with whatever tier you want, unless you want to prefix cannot be changed and reroll the veiled mod again. If you hit a really, really bad mod here, you could scour the stuff. I mean, not scour, but prefix cannot be changed and veiled chaos orb again to try and gamble and getting another veiled suffix. But if you get like T3, 4 of crit multi or crit sense to spells, I think you should just keep it. And then you do, after you slam augment crit and you hit whatever you want, you can craft the last mod. And usually you want trigger, crit multi, and crit sense to spells. And this is pretty much done. Let me know what you want to see in the next videos. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.